Hello, it is your big sis here to explain the lore of Drakengard to you. This will focus on Drakengard 1 because that's the best one. Don't at me. But I'll touch a little bit on the other ones as well. So before we begin, you have to know that in the Yoko Taro timeline, there are actually multiple timelines. So we will be going over that. It's a little complicated without a chart, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to make it as simple as possible. So the world of Drakengard in Drakengard 1 doesn't actually have a name. It is later called Midgard, but it, for all intents and purposes, it's upside down Europe. If you look at the map, it's literally upside down Europe, which I always found kind of funny. But up until Drakengard 3, it was unnamed, and so it was just kind of the world of Drakengard. But now it's called Midgard. In Midgard, there is magic, obviously, and dragons. That's where the dragon part of Dragoon comes from, which is the Japanese title, / I guess the Drake in Drakengard. But basically, in the world of Drakengard, humans can make pacts with mythological creatures in order to borrow their power. For instance, it can give them the ability to see into the future, it gives them super strength, it lets them use more powerful magic, and so on. In our main character's Keim's case, it brings him back to life from a fatal stabbing wound. As well as gives him just like a lot more power, the ability to jump like 80 feet into the air to jump onto the red dragon. It is important to note that a pact does tie the life of the creature and the human together. So basically, by forming a pact, if the dragon dies, then the human dies, and if the human dies, then the dragon dies. All that being said, it sounds kind of unfortunate for the beast, considering that now they have to lug around a human. However, usually a pact is so powerful that if they're in a life or death situation, they can come back to life, more or less, which is why Red Dragon makes the pact with Keim to begin with. That being said, all of the human characters that make pacts have to give something up, and it does have to be something important to them. The more important and powerful the creature is, the bigger the pact price is. And these pacts are usually pact prices are directly tied to things that the human loves and cherishes. So, for instance, Keim gives up his voice to make a pact with the red dragon, and it is explained that that is because after his parents were killed by the black dragon, that the only thing that really brought him joy in life was being able to talk to his sister in ENGuard. That was his only joy, his only wanting to not just survive for revenge. Obviously, he kind of throws that away when he makes this pact, but yeah. And once you make a pact, it is marked on your body. On Keim, it is marked on his tongue. Pact partners can communicate through thoughts. So basically, if Keim is somewhere and Red Dragon is in another place, they can communicate by mind reading, basically. So even though Keim can't speak, Red Dragon can speak for him. All that, and pact partners can actually communicate with other people with pacts. You see this with Verdale, who has a pact with a petrified dragon, and it basically just makes him like able to see the future or whatever, but not really. Verdale kind of sucks. But he is able to communicate with Kaim and Red Dragon and all that. There's also a point where Ariosh, who has just formed a pact, ends up kind of communicating and screaming through the desert, and then you can find her. Usually pacts are made out of, desperation. You don't really want to tie a creature to yourself. However, sometimes the creatures just like to do a little trolling. Leonard is bullied relentlessly and pretty much blackmailed into a pact with the pixie. Ariosh is deeply insane, is not mentally stable, and actually has 2 pact partners that kind of just like take her womb and make her super powerful. ENGuard makes a pact with the Black Dragon, and frankly it's not actually clear if he's super aware that he's doing it or if he's like mind controlled, or at least like really mentally changed to be super jealous of Kaim. But technically all the pacts are supposed to be consensual. It's just with an asterisk. Now, as I mentioned before, there is mind control in Drakengard, and this is called red eye disease. It is when the Watchers, which are also called angels, take over the human body, more or less, in order to basically corrupt someone. This is actually a thing throughout all of Drakengard. You actually see in Nier Automata that 9S actually ends up getting red eye disease at some point, and it's also mentioned in the backstory of the original Nier. However, in the case of the original Drakengard, it's just kind of a reason why the Empire is evil. The Watchers end up taking over the body, more or less, of a young girl named Mana, who is the primary antagonist of Ending A. And she actually becomes a party member in Drakengard 2, which is a bit outside the scope of what I'm talking about here. But basically she is controlled and leads the Empire, and it is revealed in Drakengard 3, which obviously came out later, so it wasn't planned, that she is the descendant of an intoner, which is a whole other creature thing that's not quite important here. Anyway, with that, you also have the party members, which I've already mentioned a little bit. You have Kaim, who is the main character, and he is pacted with Red Dragon. You have Leonard, who is pacted with Pixie. And the less I say about Leonard, the better. You have Ariosh, who is a crazy cannibal elf who ended up eating a bunch of children because her own children died. She's deeply insane. That's her character. And then you have Sarai, who is Mana's twin brother. So he's forever 9 because his pact price was his aging, and he is pacted with Golem, and he's trying to stop his sister, or find his sister, but then it turns into stopping her. Sarai's also in Drakengard 2, and somehow more annoying than he was in Drakengard 1. But yeah. Altogether, those characters are trying to stop the Empire from taking over, and most importantly, destroying the seal that keeps the world together. Now, there are like 3 temple seals or something like that. It's like 3 or 4. But the most important seal is the goddess seal. And the goddess seal is inside a woman, and in this case, the woman who is the goddess is Kaim's sister Fudiai. And long story short, she just kind of gets kidnapped a lot and dies most of the time. And by most of the time, I mean all the time. Because when she dies, like, the world falls apart, and that's when, like, the evil demon babies show up and things like that. So the main point of the game, up until a certain point, is to keep her safe. And joining you is her ex-fiance and Kaim's best friend ENGuard, who is a bard. He's got a lot of issues, mostly an inferiority complex towards Kaim, because of a lot of reasons, but mostly because Fudiai wants to boink her brother. She doesn't really care about ENGuard as a romantic person. She entirely has a crush on Kaim, and only really agreed to become the goddess because, well, she couldn't fuck her brother. So she might as well do that and not have to marry ENGuard, which, frankly, saying it that way, I cannot blame him for going sicko mode. As an aside, there's actually a side story about ENGuard and Kaim and Fudiai when they were younger, and ENGuard is so jealous of Kaim because Kaim's like a little older that he ends up taking a sketchy potion that's supposed to make his privates larger. Obviously it doesn't work. It's one of those like snake oil scam things, but I just really like that is a canonical thing that happens to ENGuard. He is very cringe fail. 10 out of 10. Love that guy. Incredible. He just, the cutscene of him singing while right after Kaim has finished stabbing a dead body multiple times is art. 10 out of 10. In ending A, he ends up, which leads into Drakengard 2, he ends up putting Fudiai's body and his body into one of the seeds of destruction or something like that in order to make a goop baby, which is Noe, who is the main character of Drakengard 2, which is extremely funny that just everyone in this game is deeply insane, and then they somehow still give birth to the most annoying character in Drakengard. Maybe, I don't know, Noe might be tied with Sarai, but you do spend way more time with Noe, so I might I might have to call him the most annoying. And as mentioned before, ENGuard gets mind controlled and ends up kidnapping Fudiai and leading to both of their demises. Yeah, Fudiai kind of has a rough go of it. If she isn't dying because she's getting stabbed as a ritual sacrifice and getting put into a goop egg, she gets put into a different goop egg and gets reborn as the actual goddess, but which is this horrifying bird creature thing, and she stabs ENGuard, and it's kind of awesome, like well-deserved, get owned ENGuard. Or she commits unalive after Kaim finds out that she has a crush on him. She stabs herself with the ritual dagger, so thanks for that, Fudiai. Anyway, to go through some of the endings, as I mentioned before, there's 5 endings. The first ending you get is the only one you can get on your first playthrough. It's ending A. Ending A is basically the happiest ending you're going to get in Drakengard 1. Mana is alive. She is no longer mind-controlled. Your sister's still dead and becoming a goop baby, but all things considered, it's pretty fine. The world has been saved, at least for now. The only downside is that because Fudiai died, they need a new goddess. And because, honestly, the last time they used a human, it didn't go too well, the Red Dragon offers to make herself into the goddess, Seal. And she reveals to Kaim her real name, which is Angelus, or Angel in the Japanese version. And they kiss, but not really. They do that in Drakengard 2. It is a love story. They do pretty much admit that it's a love story. But after Angelus is sealed away, Kaim yoinks and forcibly adopts Mana and forces her to like run around to all the places that the Empire fucked up and basically like get tomatoes thrown at her for a while. But he ends up like actually kind of caring about her until she like messes him up and then runs away and then loses all her memory, you know, just girly things. And that leads into Drakengard 2, which is a whole other thing. But I will say about Drakengard 2, a lot of people have a lot of complaints about that game, and I agree with a lot of them. I will say the Kaim and Angelus part absolutely makes that game worth playing. Maybe not 3 times to get all the endings, though. Ending B, you can get B and C you can start to get after your first playthrough. I think you can actually get all of them after your first playthrough. But you know, you're supposed to go in order. In ending B, ENGuard takes Fudiai to go put her body in the Seed of Destruction, which is a thing that appears when all the seals are gone. And it's supposed to be like a thing where if humans enter the seed, they will be brought to a new world or reborn, or, you know, whatever. But Angelus is like, nah, man, these seeds are bad. You don't want to touch them. So they get called Seeds of Destruction by Angelus. But because of the whole thing where if you put a person in there, the good things will happen, ENGuard in his crazy state is like, actually, let's go put Fudiai's dead body in this egg, in this seed, and then she'll come back to life, and everything will be all good. And you go, and you can't stop him. You don't stop him in ending B, and Fudiai breaks out of the egg, but now she's a horrible angel, goddess, demon monster who with tentacles, who, you know, stabs ENGuard and things like that. Hashtag girl boss moment. And then you have to fight her, and you kill her, and it feels bad, because, like, wow, that's my sister that I had to kill. That turns out that all the seeds have started hatching Fudiai goddess clones that are going to end the world. So, again, girl boss behavior. Honestly, the cutscene where she stabs ENGuard is extremely funny and well deserved, so 10 out of 10 on that. Ending C is basically the most nonsensical ending. I feel like most people don't like ending C, except for the part where, because Angelus breaks her pact with Kaim because the dragons decide, you know what, we hate humans now, they're doing all this shit, we need to stop them. This is after Fudiai stabs herself, after Kaim finds out that she's in incest with him. We have to stop them, so dragons are just going to wipe out all of humanity. And Angelus, because of that, breaks the pact with Kaim, and Kaim has his first voice line since the beginning of the game, his first and only voice line, which is, I am Kaim. And that's it. That's all he says. After a whole game of silence, it is, I am Kaim. Anyway, you fight Angelus. It is... So, the entire game, and the Drakengard series, in its entirety, is about collecting weapons to unlock different endings and different melee weapons, and they have different powers. Ending C is the only final boss fight on the ground where you use those weapons. Every other boss fight in this video game that is about collecting ground weapons, you fight on the dragon where the weapons mean nothing. This is the greatest video game of all time. It's all I can say. I have nothing else to say about that. Like, it is the greatest game of all time. I don't know why they designed it that way. Anyway, you kill Angelus, and she's actually kind of happy you killed her because she still likes you a little bit. And she's like, all right, good luck, but all the dragons are gonna, come kill you. And it just kind of ends with Kaim running out and, like, fighting a horde of dragons and presumably dying. It doesn't really say, but, like, it's Drakengard, so I assume he dies. And this ending's pretty silly because, like, suddenly it's just like, okay, the pact's broken, and it's like, it doesn't follow. Because for the rest of the game, they, like, treat the pact as, like, this unbreakable, immovable object, and suddenly it's just like, okay, I'm done with it. I am Kaim. So, like, B and C are pretty much, like, throwaway endings. They don't lead anywhere. They don't have, like, a canon continuation or anything like that, like A does. But the real meat and potatoes of the game is ending D, and by extension, ending E. Because ending D requires you to have all of your party members have done all of their side quests, including Leonard's, where you have to beat up child soldiers, which, if they remake that game, I fully expect a combo juggling montage on child soldiers to be published to YouTube immediately. So you have to do all that, and this is where the flag babies are. Because the goddess seal falls apart, all the giant babies show up, and because Sari's an idiot, and instead of, trying to help Mana or anything, he just has Golem smash her into bloody chunks. And because of that, the Watchers aren't very happy, so they send their finest, which is the flying giant babies, to destroy the world. And after all your party members get eaten or explode themselves, which honestly, thank you, Leonard, because your pact partner was really annoying, so by forcing him to explode both of you, that's pretty awesome. They summon the mother of the Watchers, who is this giant gray pregnant lady that's, like, absorbing like the entire world, and it ends up being Sarai has to dive down and use his time powers to basically freeze upside down Europe in a way that it won't spread to the rest of the world. So it just is a time frozen, like, zit on the planet. And yeah, that's ending D. Everyone dies, obviously. It's Drakengard. But there was also, on top of ending D, there was ending E, which was made as a joke. And it was basically your victory lap moment for collecting every single weapon in the game. And you have to collect every single weapon to get this ending. And you have to do ending D. And I don't remember if you have to do the other two, like the other endings, like B and C. But you do definitely have to do all of ending D. This was supposed to be a joke ending, and it ends with, instead of Sarai, putting everything into cryostasis, it ends with Kaim, Angelus, and the Big Mama getting teleported to Earth, like the actual real Tokyo, like our Earth that exists, that we live in, presumably. And you have to have a rhythm game battle with the boss. You don't fight on dragon, you just go around in a circle automatically and you press the different buttons to respond with rhythm. This kills the big guy, and Angelus and Kaim are like, yippee, and then they get shot down by Japanese fighter jets and land on the tower. Now, that was supposed to be a joke ending, but Yoko Taro became so infatuated with what would happen after this giant otherworldly creature, like, starts falling apart into, like, ash, that he ended up making a spin-off title called Nier. You might have heard of it. That is based in the world after the events of Ending E. So basically, thanks to that joke ending, we have Nier, which I feel like is Drakengard's much more well-received cousin. But yeah, so those are the endings. The thing with Drakengard, honestly all of Drakengard, is that there is a lot of stuff that is just kind of implied or put in side stories that you would never know unless you went out of your way to read a bunch of novellas. Like, in the game, it's implied that Ariosh is crazy because of the Empire killing the entire elf village at the beginning of the game. However, if you read the novella, she's been crazy before that. She was getting booed and rocks thrown at her like way before the events of the game, by elves that were very much alive, which I always thought was interesting because it like directly contradicts what's told in the game. The other thing is Leonard. You know what? I'm not gonna get into Leonard. You can look up Leonard if you want to. I'm not gonna get into him. I'm not gonna get into Leonard. And the thing with Sarai and Mana is that Mana just really wanted love the entire time. She really wanted love because her mother only liked Sarai and hated Mana. And so, because of that, she became really desperate. And the Watchers were like, hey girl, we'll give you love. We'll give you love. And that's why she became mind controlled as well as being part intoner, but that's a retcon thing. Other than that, yeah, it's pretty, honestly, Drakengard lore is pretty, like, straightforward, all things considered. I think it only really starts to get confusing when you start getting to like the Nier timeline stuff, because even like the original Nier is pretty straightforward about like what it is. It's Earth, but it's messed up. And I really think that like Drakengard 1 and 2 especially are so straightforward, that I don't know why they're considered so confusing. Because like Drakengard 2 is like generic fantasy to the point where honestly, if there wasn't returning characters, I would wonder why it was called Drakengard, since the tone is like completely different. Drakengard 3's tone is also really different, but in a more reasonable way, I guess, whereas Drakengard 2 is like really generic fantasy. Drakengard 3 is very crass and sexual and over the top and like telling jokes, and it's like so over the top in a way that the original Drakengard is also over the top in a different way, such as the fact that Kaim runs around just murdering a ton of people and clearly isn't the good guy. And Drakengard 3 just really just ramps that up to like 5,000, because Zero is 100% not the good guy, and there is like zero justification. I mean, she is a good guy, obviously, like she's doing her thing, but like in the end she is still a mass murderer, and so is Kaim. And honestly, Noe is like the only one that they don't ever really try to tackle that with. But like, I don't know, I think Drakengard 2 is still kind of worth playing. It's not very good. It has better gameplay than Drakengard 1, but like, I feel like most games have better gameplay than Drakengard 1. So that's not really saying much. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that was like a good rundown. we all hate Verdelay in this house. He sucks. Yeah, and you know what, Foodie? I don't understand what you see in Kaim, but considering your options were him or ENGuard, girl, I cannot blame you. Okay, that's all. Bye-bye.